If you want to know how one sleepy little town in Virginia ended up on the front page of every newspaper in America, well, buckle up, because you're not going to believe this actually happened. The first time I heard about old Miss Peggy, I figured it was just some wild rumor at the gas station any year old lady, barely 5 feet tall, wrinkled and silver-haired, calmly teaching a whole motorcycle gang the meaning of fear. But let me back up a sec, because what went down that week in Riverstone? That's the kind of story folks will be telling long after we're all gone. It kicked off like any other slow morning. Peggy Thompson rolling up to Mike's gas and going her battered old Taurus, looking every bit the grandmother, even though her eyes, they had that look like she'd seen things and nothing could surprise her anymore. The kid behind the counter, Jimmy, always had a wave and a smile for her, had seen her come in for years, and she always answered the same. Just fill it up, hon. Same as usual. But that morning, before the gas could even finish running, you heard a deep, throaty rumble of bikes. First 5, then 10, then more. Shadow Vipers, rolling in like they own the place, chrome flashing in the sun, the smell of leather and engine oil mixing with the scent of gasoline. Their leader, Havoc, he picked that name himself. You can tell swaggered off his bike like he was the king of the world. Well, look what we got here, he called, voice all fake friendly, and his boys cracked up like it was the best joke they'd heard in years. Granny out for her morning drive? Peggy didn't even blink. She just kept pumping her gas, like these goons were nothing but background noise. It's wild because what those punks didn't know, and Lord, if they had, they would have tucked tail and run, was that Peggy had flown rescue choppers in Vietnam, 200 missions behind enemy lines, more medals than she had room for in her closet. I guess you don't brag about that sort of thing, especially not to men who think respect comes from a loud bike and a big mouth. One of Havoc's guys, the one with a rattlesnake tattoo on his neck, pointed at her license plate and started crowing, "Hey boss, look, she's a Vietnam vet." No way this old bat flew anything but a broomstick. Havoc grinned. "Come on, sweetheart. What did you don't make coffee for the real soldiers?" The boys all cracked up again. "Peggy?" She just looked him in the eye and said, "I serve my country," then calmly hung up the nozzle. That's when it got tense. Havoc closed in, boots scraping, and the gang started to circle, cutting her off from the car. I could see Jimmy ducking behind the window, his hands shaking as he dialed his cell. Peggy didn't flinch. "You might want to move along, ma'am," Havoc sneered. "This ain't your world anymore. Shadow Vipers run this town now." Peggy stood straight, met his stare. "Son, I've seen things that'd make your whole crew cry for their mama. So do us both a favor and step aside." That just made him mad. He slammed her car door, hard enough to make it shudder. Peggy didn't even blink. "You didn't hear me," Havoc hissed, grabbing her arm. "Big mistake." Suddenly, the vibe changed. You could tell Peggy was somewhere else, maybe remembering that night in '68, pulling a wounded kid out of burning wreckage. That kid? He grew up to be Colonel Jack Morrison Aaron, Jack now, head of the state's biggest veterans motorcycle club. Years ago, he'd told Peggy, "Anything you ever need, just call." Up till that moment, she never had. But now, with these punks thinking they could scare her, she looked Havoc in the eye and said, real quiet, "You're making a mistake." She pulled out her phone. Havoc laughed. "What? You calling the cops?" "Go ahead." The gang jeered, but Peggy was dialing Iron Jack. When he picked up, you could hear in his voice, "Peggy, you just say the word." "Mike's gas and go," she said. "I could use some old friends." Not 5 minutes later, the parking lot was shaking. 40, 50 bikes, all veterans, all rolling up in formation, jackets covered in real battle patches, real scars. Iron Jack himself took off his helmet and came over. Gray hair, steely eyes. He grinned at Peggy. "Long time, Captain." Peggy just nodded, the kind of nod that says you don't have to explain a thing. Jimmy poked his head out, jaw on the floor. Shadow Vipers got real quiet. "See, veterans aren't like biker gangs. They move like a unit. No grandstanding, no bravado. Just respect, earned the hard way." The Vipers started looking around, realizing this wasn't the fight they'd signed up for. Havoc tried to keep up the act, but when Jack told him, "You can want to try scaring someone, try me," he backed down mostly. "This ain't over, old man," he spat, but his voice shook a little. Here's the twist, though. The next day, the Vipers came back. Twice as many, bringing backup from out of town, figuring numbers would fix what guts couldn't. But the veterans didn't flinch. The whole town, watching from windows, saw them standing shoulder to shoulder with the shop owners, not budging an inch. And that's when something changed in Riverstone. People started coming out, picking up hammers, sweeping glass. Veterans ran security shifts, fixed windows, showed folks how to wire cameras, and call for help. But Shadow Vipers weren't done yet. Now they wanted a real war. They set fires, threw Molotovs, tried to break the spirit of the town. What they didn't count on. All it did was unite people more. Even some of their own guys started wondering what they'd signed up for. One night, when things got real ugly, Peggy sat in her living room, radio crackling, hearing reports from every block. Sarah Chun, a Gulf War vet, turned Peggy's kitchen into a command center, tracking everything on a map. The town wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting back, smarter. And here comes the next surprise. Vipers bring in real muscle. Out-of-state cartel, mercenaries with military backgrounds. Suddenly, it's not just about one gang. It's about a whole criminal network using Riverstone as a distribution hub. The veterans didn't blink. They got the cops involved, the DEA. Every move the Vipers made, someone was watching, recording, sending evidence up the chain. There were standoffs, car chases, tense negotiations in the dead of night. In the end, it wasn't a bullet or a bomb that broke the Shadow Vipers. It was old-fashioned courage, a community standing up, and a handful of men who, when it really mattered, couldn't bring themselves to destroy what they once called home. Havoc, in his final act of desperation, tried to blow up half the town, but even then, his own right-hand man, Diesel, stopped him cold. The feds took down the cartel. Mercenaries surrendered when they saw they were outmaneuvered by a bunch of old folks. After it was over, the sun came up on a different Riverstone. Peggy sat at Diana's diner, sipping her coffee, watching former Vipers sweep the streets and patch up walls alongside the veterans. Diesel started running the town's new neighborhood watch. Sarah Chun set up a program to help ex-gang members get real jobs, real second chances. Some folks say it's a miracle, but Peggy, she just shrugs and says, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe people can change. The city council put up a statue not to war, but to unity. Strength in community, peace in understanding, it says. You look around and you see bikers and shopkeepers, teachers and war heroes, all figuring out together what comes next. Iron Jack, now half retired, just shakes his head and grins. All this started with one phone call. And Peggy, 91 now, just laughs. Yeah, sometimes it only takes one stubborn old lady who refuses to quit. So, if you ever roll through Riverstone and see a bunch of bikers and veterans laughing over coffee with their former enemies, maybe ask yourself, what's it really mean to be strong? Is it about fear? Or is it about standing up for each other, even the folks who don't seem worth saving? You know what I mean? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have forgiven, fought, or just walked away? Because sometimes the biggest battles aren't about beating the bad guys. They're about making sure you never lose sight of the good.